What's going on, guys? Jason Frausto for TennisUnleashed.net. Today we're taking a close look at Cam Norrie's backhand technique, and we're going to show you what makes it so unique and also so effective. If you want to find out what makes that backhand so special, stay tuned because it's coming up next. All right, so we've got the first example of Cam Norrie's backhand here. You got Alcaraz on the far side playing practice points at the 2022 US Open against Cam. Let's look at that super unique backhand, guys, and see what that thing's all about. Just from the beginning here, the first things that we see, everything looks pretty normal with Norrie's preparation here in the beginning. So we see a couple of things that are pretty traditional. Racket will be to the outside like this. Got the body turned here, right? We've got a unit turn, turning the shoulders, going to the ball. He's still holding the racket head to the outside and the right side of the body like this, and the outside of the hands. He starts to transition weight from his back foot, right? He's going to go into the front foot and step into the ball technically and across with a closed stance right here. So we see a strong closed stance there. He's still holding the racket to the outside of the hands like this, which again is pretty traditional. One thing that's a little bit different with his backhand compared to a lot of guys is the position of the hands, how deep they are as far as how far back his hands are. Other guys will tend to go a little bit further back with the hands deeper behind the body at this point in the swing. He tends to hold them a little bit more in front like this. And then from here, this is where we see the big differences between most of Cam Norrie's backhands and the other guys on tour. So he has that racket head still to the outside at this point in the swing. And we'll do a side-by-side with him and Rublev in a minute to show you the differences here. But Cam's racket, 9 times out of 10, the racket tip right here never gets behind the hitting hands during the course of the backswing. And for most players, it's very common to get the tip of the racket at here and have it trail back behind these hands a little bit before it comes forward. Players like Sinner, players like Nadal get the tip of the racket head most times behind their glutes back here to generate all their pace on their backhands, right? Norrie has one of the shortest backswings you're ever going to see. The hitting hands here really never get behind the body at all in most of his swings, so the racket head stays to the outside. It's a very strange swing compared to most other players, and especially most other top players. But from here, guys, he comes forward, just gets below the ball just a little bit here, right? Just a tiny bit right there. And he has this strange thing that he does on most of his backhands where the racket face here actually tends to go and open a little bit to the sky and to the opponent, a little bit open here on the follow through, like he's hitting a bit of a underspin backhand instead of a topspin backhand, which again, very deceiving, right? Because we think of a slice backhand, and when we think of a slice backhand, we think of a one-handed shot, right? Guy coming clearly underneath the ball with a completely or mostly open racket face. But what Cam does, he approaches it like a topspin backhand, and a lot of times he comes underneath the ball here and opens the strings just slightly before he follows through. And what that does is that when it gets over on the other side to the opponent, the ball tends to be lower and the ball tends to skid a little bit into their contact. And you can see Alcaraz over here on this side, how uncomfortable he is right now in this position. Look at how low the contact is. It's just above his knee, right? And then at that point, he's going to have to really lift and follow through high and try to roll the ball to get the ball back over the net on this side of the court. So it's making him very uncomfortable, this kind of skidding and low backhand. So Norrie's contact and his approach to contact, not having the traditional backswing where the tip of the racket gets a little bit more behind the hands here, actually leads to almost a little bit of an underspin backhand, right? We know he has his super low spin rates on his backhand. It's almost more of an underspin backhand a lot of the time than it is a topspin backhand, and that low and somewhat skidding backhand can present problems for his opponents, especially on faster courts that are really slick. Let's move on to the next comparison here. All right, so in this comparison, right, we've got Norrie over here on the left side, guys, and we've got Rublev over here on the right side. We're going to do Rublev as a lefty here so you can get a better true comparison of this, but let's look at these backhands and let's look at those technical differences between Norrie and Rublev. And what we see right away with Norrie, right, we see the outside preparation that we talked about in the first video with the hands right here, but we can see that Rublev has a similar preparation position. It's a little bit lower, right? But his hands are a little bit further back and will get behind his hips during the backswing. Norrie really holds the position out here before he comes forward. And you can see with Rublev here on the right especially, look at where the tip of the racket goes. It gets to exactly what we talked about in the first part of this video, but he gets the tip of the racket head behind his hitting hands right here. And with Norrie, again, look what we've got, right? 2 straight arms right here. He's still holding the racket out to the right side, guys. And he never, on this particular shot, he does this most of the time, he never gets the tip of the racket head to come behind the hands. So it's not conducive to hitting topspin when you don't bring the tip of the racket head like this and you don't get it behind the hitting hands over here. If you're missing that step, you're going to have a really tough time generating topspin, because topspin, as we know, is an inside to outside swing path. And Rublev does that, right? He gets the inside with the tip here. He's going to come outside and contact the ball right there. But Norrie is completely missing this by getting the racket over here to the right. So as we come forward from here, we can see, again, Norrie taking the contact right here and then Rublev contacting here. This actually looks very similar in both images, right? Minus a higher contact point for Rublev. But what do we see from Rublev? After contact, the strings of the racket will close and kind of close over and off, all right, over the ball. Norrie here, though, on the left, look what the difference is with him. He's actually opening the racket face on the left compared to what Rublev is doing on the right, where he's really closing, right? Norrie's racket head speed here also considerably slower because he's coming under and he's guiding it with a little bit of slice on this. It's not completely a topspin backhand. It's sort of this mishmash between the two. And again, look at Rublev finish here on the right and really wrap and close off the strings compared to Norrie over here on the left, opening to the opponent. So that's quite a technical difference. And it makes a big difference, guys, as to what happens on the other side of the court. Norrie's ball tends to be lower, right? And it tends to skip through. Let's go to the next one now. But what makes Norrie so challenging to play is he has different types of backhand backswings, and I'm going to show you that right now. So we talked about how he uses this abbreviated backswing 90% of the time when he's playing, right? But what about that other 10% of the time where he needs to try to get a little bit of topspin on the ball and he doesn't want it to skip or be kind of this underspin backhand? Well, here's an example against Alcaraz, point play 2022 US Open practice, where Norrie has a situation where he does something a little different. So Norrie, again, preparation here looks exactly like it did before, right, guys? But moving forward from there, look what Norrie does here. He still has the racket to the outside of the hands, but we've got Alcaraz approaching the net. Now, when you're hitting a backhand that has a little bit more of a slice or open racket face to it, that might sit up and kind of glide over the net, unlike topspin, and sit up for the volleyer. So in this situation, Norrie doesn't want that. In this situation, Norrie wants the ball to kind of go up and down at Alcaraz's feet because Alcaraz is approaching the net and he wants Alcaraz to have to volley up so that Norrie can try to make a pass on the next shot, right? So Norrie's going to deviate from the norm. We're going to see that here. Look at this, boys. Look at this. Norrie gets the tip of the racket head behind the hitting hands when he needs to, okay? And he feels like on this shot, because again, Alcaraz is at the net and he wants to dip the ball at his feet, he's going to actually stretch the tip of the racket back into more of a traditional position. Not as far as Rublev, where the tip is way back behind the hands, right? But he gets it back. So it shows you that Norrie's backhand is so tough to play, number one, because he uses that skippy backhand. A lot of the times it's kind of underspin, hybrid topspin backhand with low RPMs. But then when he needs to come over the ball, he will take a little bit more of a traditional swing path, and then he will use the topspin here to dip, look at that, right? To dip it below the net against Alcaraz. That dip would not be possible unless he achieved this more traditional position in the backswing. And again, he doesn't use this position unless he feels like he has to. Let's move on to the final example of his technique now. So we've got Norrie on the near side and we've got Rune on the far side. This is Cincinnati 2022 Western and Southern Open match play footage, right? So we're coming from here, guys. Rune getting ready to get aggressive with the forehand, takes it early. and Norrie coming from this side of the court and having to come over to this side of the court. Now, when he's scrambling like this, again, this is another situation where he sort of senses that Rune might be coming forward and expecting a short ball. And in Norrie's mind, in this situation, he needs to take that ball and dip it at Rune's feet. Okay, he doesn't know for sure if he's coming in, but he thinks it might be possible. So look at the finish right here in particular, right? He doesn't achieve the full position and backswing that he achieved on some of the other ones, but he's also not keeping the racket head way out here to the right side like he traditionally does on that skipper underspin style backhand. But here, he really makes the effort on the follow through and the finish especially to try to dip the ball with a little bit of topspin in case Rune was coming into the net, so that if he was, the ball would have been right at Rune's feet for the first volley right here. So again, most of the time, Norrie uses sort of this chip backhand underspin type finish, but in certain situations when he's put under extreme pressure and he thinks someone's coming forward and he might need to create some topspin or get something at somebody's feet, he changes his backswing. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this breakdown of Cam Norrie's backhand technique. If you found this video helpful or you feel like you learned something today, make sure you smash that like and subscribe button. It helps this channel continue to grow. I'm Jason Frausto for tennisunleashed.net. I'll see you next time.